We're back with another podcast of All About Nothing, and today my guest is
Matt Conroy, Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress in the 5th District in Illinois.
So we're going to talk about term limits and trading stocks.
Exciting stuff. Yeah, everyone's blood is pumping right now.
So first, let's hear your background. Where were you at? I always ask this question. What made you get into politics, and where were you at the age of 16 years old? Like, what were you doing at 16?
Yeah, so at 16, I was in 2004, just to give people some context. Very much against...
He's a young one, I'm the old one here.
Very much against the Iraq War at that time. I was volunteering within the community at that point. I actually did a Habitat for Humanity service trip to Tijuana, where we built homes for people down there. And then on weekends, actually every Saturday, I would volunteer at a clinic or a program that worked with mentally handicapped people, mentally disabled people, particularly around the ages of 20 to 25, trying to give them the life skills to live on their own. So we were helping them with cooking, cleaning, things like that. And for me, it just gave me a whole new perspective on life, just because, growing up, I was never even thought about how challenging life could be.
Yeah.
And then you see what some other people are going through, and the fact that they still have the kindest, most gentle spirit, and they just are so sweet and so loving. And it's okay, if they can look at life that way, I can do the same.
So, Billy, we're going back to Tijuana, Mexico. How did you feel at that age going across the border?
I was nervous that I didn't know what to expect. We knew we were going to Tijuana. We knew, you only hear what you see in the news.
Right.
And then, I'm not denying that there are dangerous parts of the city, but that wasn't where we were. We were helping out families, and we were building homes for people just so they could put a roof over their head. Yeah. And they were so gracious to have us down there that they would cook food for. It was our school from New York. There were about 20, 25 of us. And there were a couple other schools from around the country. So I would say all in, there were about 60 people. And they had different construction sites that we were volunteering at. And they were just so grateful that we were able to help them out, that they would bring us food every single day. When we would go back to the hotel we were staying at, right across the street, there was a convenience store. And, we would just go to get chips and soda and ice cream and stuff, because that's what 16-year-old boys eat. And they were just so nice and so sweet. And it's maybe everything you hear in the news isn't always true when they're trying to paint a picture about a certain place.
So that must have been some good food you're eating down there, because I have several Latin friends, Dominican, Mexican, Spaniards.
Yeah.
It's all about the food.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in New York City, too. I grew up in Brooklyn, and where I grew up is a very, very diverse area. So, one block to the west is a very, Middle Eastern, a lot of Pakistani, Southeast Asian, Indian. Going to the north was very Hispanic, Mexican, Dominican, Puerto Rican. Even further, 3 blocks up was Borough Park, very highly concentrated Jewish area. Yeah. And, kind of the stereotypical Brooklyn childhood is growing up, and you're friends with all them, and you play wiffle ball, and you play basketball in the street, and you hang out at the schoolyard, and it's just and they're all always about food and family and welcoming people in, and I loved growing up there, and I wouldn't change anything about it.
So what made you decide to come across 16 hours drive from New York to Chicago?
So I actually moved out here for a work opportunity in 2015. I was living in the South Loop for a few years till 2019, and then went through a breakup. Needed to move needed a break. Moved to LA, and I met my wife out there, and we came back to Chicago in 2022. And I always loved the city, and I always wanted this to feel like home. I just knew I needed it to be with the right person, and I found that person.
Nice.
And it gives us a nice little buffer between our families. Mine's in New York, hers is in LA, so we don't have the pop-in. But, Chicago's the best. It offers you...
Christmas this year, Thanksgiving another year.
Exactly.
We're going to do our own thing on this year.
Yeah, and in my opinion, Chicago is the best food city in the country. It's just like you go
Hands down,
anywhere you
100%.
go, every single cuisine. It's so nice, and everyone's so friendly and so welcoming, and it's just a lot of the things that I really liked growing up. New York has kind of evolved a little bit away from.
Yeah.
Chicago still has that, and that's why this is our home.
So New York style pizza or Chicago style pizza?
At 365 days a year, I'm going New York style.
Okay.
But winter, we look outside. There's snow outside right now. I could cuddle up with a good deep dish.
Right, exactly.
It has its place and its time.
Yeah, that is true. So let's talk about term limits.
All right.
What are your thoughts and concepts on term limits as a potential elected official? And what about your thoughts about the elected officials that's in office now that's been there for 20 to 30 years?
Yeah. So when you look at any job, anybody in any career opportunity, after 10 or 15 years, you start to get a little complacent, and you also start to lose touch with kind of what motivated you in the first place. So that is just a generic reason of why we need term limits. We force airline pilots to retire at 65 for the safety of commercial commercial passengers. Why are we not doing something similar for elected officials? You look at what's happening. I mean, Mitch McConnell, every single clip you see of him, unfortunately, the guy's fallen down. He's getting hurt,
Yes.
And it couldn't happen to a worse guy. You look at Elaine Norton, the congresswoman from D.C. She was just the victim of a scam.
Oh, yeah,
And the
that's
police
right.
report said
Yeah.
that she is showing signs of dementia. She's 88 years old, showing signs of dementia, and she's trying to run for re-election. And nobody in the party has the courage to stand up and say, hey, look, you've been great. We really appreciate everything you've done, but it's time for you to step aside. In my opinion, if you can no longer delay Social Security, which is age 70, you can no longer serve an elected office. For a couple reasons. Number one, quite frankly, there is a risk of diminished mental capacity as you get older. It's science. No one is immune from it. Look at our president. His brain is rotting and turning into scrambled eggs in front of our eyes. Number two, it helps keep people connected. Like, it helps get fresh voices in there. Look, Mike Quigley's been in office for 16 years. Anybody who's been in office for 16 years is just less connected with their community and less ear to the ground. And it's all across the board. Every level of government, you're going to be less connected because that's the way the game is set up. And that is one of the things that we need to change. So in my opinion, when you look at term limits, presidency's 8 years, Senate, there's no limit, terms are 6 years. Look, if they did 12 years in the House, 12 years in the Senate, match it up, that's fine. If they wanted to go even lower, 8 or 10, I would support any measure that would put some sort of limitations on government, get fresh voices in there, fresh ideas, and help move the country forward, because right now they are comfortable keeping in the status quo, and that is why they like to hold on to power until the last possible second.
You know what's interesting is I find that I agree with you on term limits. Interesting story is people get elected, they come into Congress or U.S. Senate, they're sharing a room, they're in D.C. because they travel back and forth.
Yep.
They're sharing apartments, with people sleeping on their sofa. And all of a sudden, 4 or 5 years later, they're like $2.4 million.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how did you get that on a Senate or a legislative income?
Exactly.
Which is very interesting. I forgot what it was. Like, one of the politicians made over $5 million.
Oh, yeah.
And this was like, we need term limits.
Yeah. We need term limits. We also need to get money out of politics, not just from donations from corporate donors, PAC donors, and lobbyists, but when we talk about congressional stock trading, like, that is a big thing. There's no way that a lot of people can be uncompromised if they're simply profiting, if they're putting money ahead of themselves. You look at COVID, go back 5.5 years. Look at what happened with so many of our politicians. They all bought like healthcare stocks, tech stocks, and they dumped their retail and hospitality stocks ahead of it. It's proven record. And what happens? They just get a ding of what, $200, $300? That's not a system design. Look, if you've banned Congress, their staff, their immediate families from trading individual stocks, it's not going to necessarily have a huge impact potentially on everyday Americans' life, but it's going to restore a little bit of trust back into the American public. And
I
at the
agree.
bare minimum, that's what you have to do, because the trust and congressional approval is at all-time lows. And it's not getting any better because they're not working for us. And by not doing something as simple as banning themselves, their staffs, and their immediate family from trading stocks, they're going to really continue to put the American public at a hard place.
Oh, I totally agree. If they even donated money, or half of that money to like transit or bus, CTA or train, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
That money that they're earning or getting from these corporations will make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Cities wouldn't be in debt. They would have trains when you leave the airport throughout the city. And it's very interesting that we allow the American people and still vote for people that trade stocks.
Yeah. And I mean, there's Twitter accounts dedicated to it. Nancy Pelosi stock tracker that literally the second she has a trade, within minutes, it's on Twitter and there's people buying the same positions when she sells it. So like, this is what we're talking about with congressional representatives having inside information to enrich themselves and not pay attention to us. Again, getting back to that trust issue that we're talking about here, if we implemented a law that banned Congress from trading stocks, what we're saying to the American people is saying, hey, for the time that we're serving, we are going to put our financial interest ahead of or behind yours. We're going to flip it. Because right now, they are clearly putting their own financial interest ahead of the American public. But by banning stocks, we're saying, hey, you know what? We're going to put your needs first. And look, in a realistic congressional stock trading ban, they would still be able to invest in mutual funds. Like, they should still be able to open up IRAs. They have kids that need to go to college. They got to invest in 529s. Like, those are absolutely things that, quite frankly, are available to the American public and should be available to members of Congress, but they shouldn't be able to trade individual stocks on inside information that we don't have access to.
And they could put it in a trust.
They could put it in a trust, yeah. But then you get into the backroom deals, like, hey, I heard this is doing this. My financial advisor for this, half the Senate, and he knows that this drug company is going to get a patent approved next week, and they're going to buy their stock. Yeah. So it's, it's all backroom deals and shady stuff that the American people hate, and no one's working to change any of it.
Okay, so we're going to move on. And what vision do you see when getting elected into Congress? What vision do you see in yourself in a position? Or a leadership position, shall I say?
Yeah, so I don't think I would be given a leadership position within the party right away. I think the Democratic Party is still very hierarchy, seniority based, and I think that's one of the problems with the Democratic Party. Because you look at the events that have happened the past few weeks with the Democrats caving during the shutdown, it's clear to the American public overwhelmingly that Chuck Schumer is not fit to be leader of Democrats in the Senate. And no one in the Senate has come out and said it. But leadership sometimes is putting your own self-interest ahead of the party. So you had Ro Khanna come out immediately and say he should step down as leader. He's no longer fit. Since then, I believe it's now up to about 6 or 7 members of Congress, including Delia Ramirez right here, who has said that. And I agree with them. Chuck Schumer is not fit to lead. So what my vision for myself is, that's leading by example. That's putting the benefit and the performance of, quote, your team or Democrats and the country ahead of your own political interests. That's exactly what I do. Look, I believe that every American should have access to health care, every American should have access to child care, paid family leave. We need to strengthen Social Security. My whole list of issues that you can find on my website, mattconroyforcongress.com. And I'm going to work to fight those, and I'm not going to compromise my positions on those, because those are things that are going to make everyone's life better. And if that means I lose my next election, or I lose elections, and I'm only in office for 4 years, that's unfortunately sometimes the way that cookie crumbles. But I'm going to fight for the things that I promised the people of this district I'm going to fight for. I'm going to listen to their issues, I'm going to hear them, and I'm going to work every single day to make their lives better. And if the party views me as an asset and wants to put me in a leadership position, I'm going to be open to that, but I'm not going to take any position. I'm not going to do anything that's going to compromise the things that I want to work for to make people's lives better.
Well, that's a powerful statement. So we're going to wrap this up with All About Nothing, but I got one more question for you. What inspired you to run for Congress?
So I've always thought I've always tried to find ways to give back to the community and be involved. And when I look at just how many people around the country are struggling with their bills, with their health care, like, I'm 37 years old now, but I remember out of college less than 15 years ago, I made $16,000 my first year out of college. Like, I was like, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to pay the bills?
Wow.
Like, I was living in Boston at the time, not a cheap city. I took on credit card debt because of that. Like, I've been laid off. I've gone without health insurance. I know the struggle that it goes through. And seeing that we have the same these problems have existed forever, and that we have elected officials who have been in office forever who refuse to address it, I knew that I had to get involved. I had to speak up, because if I'm feeling this way, there are millions of other people around the country who are feeling this way. And that's what we're hearing when we're out in the community talking to people, that they're ready for a change. They're tired of the status quo that has failed them, that has failed their friends, their family, and left millions of Americans behind.
You made $16,000 when you got out of college.
I did, and I have the W-2 to prove it.
Oh my God. And this is everyday America.
Yeah. Yeah. This is every day. There are people now who still make $16,000 a year. Yeah. Think about that. Like, we know how expensive it is. We do live in an expensive city. There are people who make $16,000 a year here. That's below the poverty line. Like, that's unacceptable.
All right. So we're going to wrap this up, and our next conversation is going to be about living wage.
Every American deserves a living wage.
So introduce yourself to our audience again, and we're going to say goodbye about All About Nothing.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. My name is Matt Conroy. I'm a Democrat running for U.S. Congress in Illinois' 5th Congressional District. To learn more about us, go to our website, mattconroyforcongress.com.